Hi, it's Kathy with City Farmhouse Studio. Today I'm excited to show you how to make this crocheted simple step scarf. It is a great project to learn how to crochet, but even if you already know, it is a great scarf to make for yourself or for friends. The link to the patterns can be found in the description below. For this project, I used this I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby. A 5-ounce skein that is also 142 grams, has 252 yards, 230 meters, and it is a category 4 medium yarn. For this project, you will need 2 skeins. However, you won't need the full skein, so you'll even have enough left over to make the Simple Steps ear warmer headband. It is 97% acrylic, 3% viscose. Now, if you do not have a Hobby Lobby around you, I've also listed down below in the patterns some other options that I know of that would be great substitutes. Along with the yarn, you are going to need a crochet hook, and I am using a crochet hook I or 9. It is also sometimes referred to as a 5.5 millimeter. And then to start your skein, you're going to look for the end that is tucked into one. You're going to look for the outside string of the yarn that is tucked into the center, and you're going to pull that out. I tuck it into the label just to keep it out of the way for now. And then you're going to go into the other end and kind of reach in there and try to find the middle portion of where all the wrappings kind of, you feel like you're in the center of that, and try to see if you can grab a piece of this yarn and pull that out. And hopefully you just get one end of the string, one end of the yarn, and not a whole big clump that comes out. And then you may have to kind of pull that apart to where you just find the very end of the yarn. So to start with crochet, we're going to start with the slip knot on our hook. And this is what kind of holds everything in place and where we start. And to do that, I'm just going to make a loop over the end. And I leave a couple inches, maybe 6 to 8 inches at the end. And then you're going to insert your hook into that loop so you can see what's going to the skein of yarn is on top. And I want to pull that string of yarn through. I create a loop and a slip knot because that knot slides down onto the hook. Okay, so then in our instructions, it says to chain, so the abbreviation for chain is CH, chain 23. And chain is just taking that yarn and pulling it through the loop that is on your hook. So that was 1 chain, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you just continue going until you have the 23. And this is creating the very edge of the scarf. And you're going to, when you pull through, you want to be sure you're not pulling it too tight, because that would create the end that is too tight. So you can see there's still space by my crochet hook. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So that is the beginning chain of our scarf. And then for row 1, it says to single crochet, so SC is single crochet, in the second chain from the hook, and then each stitch of the previous row. So the second stitch from the hook, so this is the first stitch. We never count the one that is on the hook. So here's our first. I'm going to go into just one of those loops. In a single crochet, you just pull up a loop. So now you have 2 loops on your hook, and pull a loop through both of those. So that made 1 single crochet. So let's do that again. I go into the next spot. So here's where I worked into. I'm going to go into that next loop, pull 1 loop up. So I have 2 loops on my hook, and pull through both of those. Go into the next stitch, pull 1 loop, and close that. So this is all we're going to do in each of these chain stitches that we did, and this is our beginning edge. And now you can already see how thick the single crochet is. So if you made your chain too tight, it's going to squeeze it all together. And it's also going to make it very hard to work into. So having a loose chain at the beginning drastically helps your project be easier to make. And sometimes you just have to do it again and again, sometimes if you're like me, to make it not too big and not too small, but just that mama bear right size. Okay, so here's my last loop, my last stitch. And you can kind of feel the slip knot in the end. And then you can even go in and count. So this is the first, that kind of knuckled bar of yarn right there. That's the first chain on the hook. So we don't count that. Here's our first stitch, our first single crochet. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So what I've achieved matches what I need to have in the pattern. Now for row 2, we're going to do a row of single crochets, so the same stitch, but we need to now work back along the side. So to move, you're going to chain 1 and turn. And just how this did not count as a stitch, same thing with that chain 1. We're going to go into the first stitch of the row, which was the last stitch of the previous row, and I'm going to make a single crochet in that. Here I go through both of those loops. To me, they make little hearts. So I want to go into both of those loops, pull the loop up so there's 2 on the hook, and then pull through both of those. So now I have 2, pull through both. And we just continue doing that all the way down. Okay, so now we're back down, and that was that turning chain. So this is my last stitch I want to work into. And you can go ahead and you see that line, that's the chain that we did to turn to get to this row, so we can count again. 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Everything is complete. Row 3, we're doing the exact same thing, so chain 1 and turn, and then we single crochet in each of those stitches. So nothing new so far. And you can see I just hold that string of yarn in between my pointer and middle finger. And I'm not squeezing it to where it's pulling against it. It's more just keeping a very light tension, a little bit of drag, so that it stays in place and it doesn't have slack on the string. It just kind of holds it in place where it's easy to pull. Just glides through my fingers. Okay, so now we have done 3 rows of single crochet, working into that beginning chain. And now we're going to do what is called a half double crochet. And so we're just going to build onto that single crochet a little bit to make a little bit bulkier, a little bit different stitch. Now this stitch is higher, so instead of just chaining 1, we are going to chain 2 and turn. And on a single crochet, we went straight into our stitch. For a half double crochet, we're going to wrap our hook with the yarn, then go into your stitch and pull up a loop. Then once you have those 3 loops on your hook, pull a loop through all of them. So this wrap over creates just a little bit more of a width, and a little bit bulkier stitch. But other than wrapping over right before you insert your hook into the stitch, that is the only thing difference. And then you pull through 3 loops instead of just 2. So wrap, insert your hook, pull a loop up, pull through all 3. Wrap your hook, insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull through all 3. So there I've finished the first row of half double crochet, and I want to have 3 total rows of them. So if you look at row 5 and row 6, both of them are the same. So just as before, chain 2, turn. Now whenever you look, you almost see that heart shape facing you, and then there's a heart shape on the top. The one that faces you, that bottom edge, is from the wrap of the half double crochet. So for this row, when we wrap, we want to go into the 2 kind of on the top back edge. And that is the top of our stitch. So wrap, insert, loop up, pull through 2. And this, what creates the wrap, or the line that is created from the wrapping of the hook, will be shown every other row. So this side, there's that line already starting to form. So it's a nice little added detail that we get with half double crochets. Okay, so now for the third row, row 6 of half double crochets, chain 2 and turn. There's that line again. Wrap our hook and go into the topmost 2, that like come towards the back, away from you. All right, so there you can see that ridged line from the previous row's half double crochet. And then on the back side, here's the first row, and then the one we just completed. Once we do our stitches next, that line will appear more visible. So now we're ready to begin row 7. And row 7 are double crochets. And a double crochet is going to be built off of what we did in the half double crochet, but we're going to, just as we did chain 2 for half double crochets, a double crochet is taller, so we're going to chain 3 and turn. And then this one is a little different, where before our turning chain did not count in our stitches. On double crochets they do. So I'm going to say this chain 3 acts as 1 stitch, and I want to double crochet in the second stitch. So that was our first half double crochet from previous row, or the last half double crochet we made. I want to go into this next half double crochet to make my next stitch. Now to make a double crochet, we're going to wrap our hook just like we did on a half double, go into our stitch just like we did on a half double, pull up a loop, all the same, but now we're going to go through only 2 of those loops on our hook and then go through 2 again. So you can see this is really making a tall stitch. So again, let's make another one. Wrap our hook, go into the next stitch, pull one loop up, pull a loop through two loops on your hook, and then we're going to pull through a loop on those last two. Wrap our hook, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, go through two, go through two. And we continue that all the way down, doing that in each of the stitches. And then on our last stitch, row 8, we're going to begin similarly of the chain 3 and turn. Again, this counts as a stitch. So we want to double crochet in the second stitch of the previous row and all the way down. And once I get to the end, I'll show you how to stitch in that turning chain. All right, here's the last double crochet stitch itself, and this is the turning chain. So I'm going to wrap my hook and then go through, I like to go through both outside edges of the yarn for that chain stitch, so there's just one underneath, and then make a double crochet in that. And to me that just gives it the most similar appearance to the other stitches. And then I want to do this row once more. So chain 3, turn, and then we go back down the line. So now once you know the chain stitches, the single crochet stitches, half double crochet, and the double crochet, you pretty much know the basis for all crochet stitches. The only thing that changes is where you insert your hook, and sometimes to decrease you may have to modify how you pull through some loops and that sort, but they're all based off of these stitches for the most part. There are things such as a treble crochet, which you wrap your hook twice before inserting a hook. But once you know the double crochet, it's kind of just a variation on it. And we're coming down to that end stitch. So again, wrap my hook. I can see here's the stitch. So I'm going to go through the outside two strands of yarn, pull a loop up, pull through once, and the last one. All right, so there's the beginning of the scarf. Now you've learned all the stitches, but the repeat, we're just going to chain one and turn and do a single crochet. So we're going to go into that first stitch, remember, because that chain does not count, and just pull a loop up, pull through the loops, pull a loop up, pull through both loops on the hook. So we'll do this stitch, the single crochet, for 3 rows. And it's kind of easy to see after the double crochet. You can read those very easy with the openness of those stitches. You can count the 3 rows. The half double crochets, you look for those lines on the opposite side. So you'd have 1 line on one side of the fabric and then those 2 on the other side. Single crochets are a little bit harder to read, the rows. So what I look for is where I can see. You really have to look to figure out where the top of the double crochet is, and then you'll see these little V, almost chicken feet, bird feet, teeth marks. You look for those, and each set of those going up is a single crochet row. So let's get a couple rows and we can look at that. Okay. Again, I'm at the last double crochet, so I can see my last hook, my last loop. So I'm going to insert my hook, have both of those strands of yarn, and make my single crochet. Okay, row 11, again, chain 1, turn, first stitch, I make a single crochet. We go back, okay, so now for row 12, again, chain 1 and turn, single crochet across. After this row, you'll do 3 rows of half double crochet, 3 rows of double crochet, 3 rows of single crochet. And you just keep repeating that pattern until you get your 60 inches of scarf or your desired length. But at one point you will run out of yarn. And once I do, I will show you how to join yarn. But first, let's finish this row and we can look at our stitch reading for the rows. Because in crochet and knitting too, being able to read your work is probably the most beneficial thing you can do. All right, so as we talked, here is a double crochet. We can tell by that the openness. Okay, here's one of that first little chicken bite feet going around a post. Then a little bit off, there's another set. So that's 2. And then here's our last one that we just did. So that's how you can read 3 rows. You can, looking at the top, being able to see what's the turning chain, counting those hearts for your stitches tops. All right. So now that we've finished the 3 rows of single crochet, we're repeating the pattern. So we're going to repeat 2 chains and half double crochet in that first stitch. If you need to, look down below at the timestamps to reference all the other stitches if you need them row by row. Otherwise, I'll show you how to start another skein. Now you can see that I've continued working on the scarf. I've used all of that first skein, and I have just that much left. You will want to leave a good portion to weave in the end to hide. So I'm actually going to go back out a few more just so I have enough to work with to sew in. And what weaving in the ends means, just you take all of the loose bits of string where you started and where you ended each skein, and you weave them through with a needle to hide them into your work. And I'll show you that here in a minute. But first, we need to continue on with the second skein because this currently is not long enough, just using 1. So I have the end for the other skein, and I'm just going to hold it in the back of my work. I've already stopped, just as you would to start a new stitch. Go ahead and insert it into the stitch, holding that tail still, and go through everything just as you would a normal stitch. Now you can see that that last loop from the previous stitch has kind of gotten a little bit bigger because I'm not holding it. So I'm just going to tug that so it looks about the same. And then I'm going to go make the next stitch and continue on. So if you were a double crochet, you would wrap your hook and work a double crochet. If you were on a single crochet row, let's pretend I just did a single crochet, you would just go in, pull a loop up, and pull through both loops. And then still probably give that first string a little tug. And then you would continue working. So let's continue working a little bit, and then I'll show you how to bind off, which means stopping to where the yarn won't unravel. And then I'll show you how to weave in the ends. I've continued repeating the pattern of half double crochets, and then single crochets. I've finished on a single crochet row after the 3 rows of single crochets, and the total length of the scarf is 60 inches. So once you get to your finished length, whatever it is you desire, it is time to bind off and weave in the ends. Binding off is what you do to ensure that this loop does not pull out and therefore pull out all of your stitches. So to bind off, I just make a larger loop, so I'm sure not to pull it out. And then I take scissors and give myself a little bit of length, and I just trim that off from the skein. Once you have it cut, you just take that end and go through your loop and pull it tight. And now all your stitches are secured and you do not have to worry about it coming undone. Now the next step is to weave in your ends. And the ends are just the end of this yarn. We have them at the beginning and the end of the project, along with any time you start another skein. So we have 4 ends in this project we need to weave in. So I take a large-eyed blunt tapestry needle. I'm just going to thread my yarn into that. And then I always go through that first stitch on the top to start, and that just pulls that corner down in. And then there is no right or wrong way that you need to weave in your ends, but I just follow some of the stitches. You want to kind of go in between the stitch where it wrapped around the row before for a few stitches. Get a little length in there. Be sure not to pull too tight. And then I want to weave it down between a post. You have double crochets, so it's nice to kind of wrap it around. Make sure you're not going to see it on either side. And pull that in. And you want to do this just for several inches. You want to weave it back and forth, up and down a little bit. And that is to help if the end is pulled out in one direction, well then there's another direction it has to go. It can't all come out in one direction. So I'm just going to weave this in for a little bit more. You really cannot tell where this yarn is going. And then I'll come back this way a little bit. All right. Make sure it's not pulled tight. It's in there loosely, and then I just trim that close to the edge, and there your end has disappeared. So now a similar method where I started my skein. Now here I can see where I started it left kind of a hole. So I'm going to go to the next one where that hole is and just pull that closed. Like that. And then once I do this over, no one will ever be the wiser. That one, making sure you're not going to see it. I'm going to redo that so I get a little bit more hidden. There we go, that's the row. This is a great time to sit in front of the TV, just weave in your ends on projects. In my opinion, it's one of the least interesting things to do. But it's so gratifying whenever you're all done and your project is done. And then I'll just cut back a little bit on this one. And trim that one. So there you can see it has a little nub, but as soon as I give it a little stretch, it tucks in there and disappears. So since I had that other tail, that other end that I went down, I'm going to take this one up just to make sure I don't have any overlaps of doubling up of the thread, doubling up of the yarn. And then the tail from where we began. Very first stitch, just kind of tuck it in. So the slip knot disappears. And then just zigzag around, a little this way, a little that way. Get a few inches distance. And there you go. And now you have finished your first crochet project. I hope you are as proud of yourself as I am of you. So much fun, so many possibilities. You now know the chain, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochets. I hope you are now inspired to create other wonderful crochet items. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on any other tutorials from City Farmhouse Studio. Thanks again. Bye.